This title may seem a bit odd. Improve your drawing faster, stop drawing. When we do a drawing, what are we doing? Mostly we're creating a scene of some sort in some way. It could be a very simple scene, it could be very complex, and probably for most of us, we're copying from a photo because that's the most accessible way for us to find a variety of things that are also of interest to us that we can draw. And we probably try and choose a photo that's got an interesting composition, that looks good in the photo because, well, if the composition's already sorted before we start to draw, that's one tick, and that has to be a help. And then, well, I need to draw. I need to practice doing drawings. Let me explain the problem with this. It probably is your problem if you've produced a lot of drawings and they all look pretty much the same. There's not really any improvement. There's not really any change. I'm confident that what I'm going to say now could really turn things around for you. Now, drawings can take a long time to complete, especially when we're just starting out. And from talking with people who are at the beginning of their drawing, they often remark that the drawings they do take 2 to 3 hours to complete. Therefore, it can be hard to find the time and the energy to do more than one a week, if that. Let's say we do one drawing that takes 2.5 hours to do once a week, sometime on the weekend. I like to think of that as one drawing cycle, that 2.5 hour time slot where we do the drawing. We choose the photo, we set up, we get ready, we do the drawing, and hopefully we assess what we've done at the end. And every time we do a drawing, we repeat this drawing cycle. But it's not just a drawing cycle, it's also our learning cycle. This is the cycle, this is the start to finish process whereby we learn things that when they get added together, cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle, add up to observable improvements. And the key part of the drawing cycle, in terms of its doubling as the learning cycle, is the last part. It's the looking at what I've drawn and assessing it, critiquing it, thinking, has this worked out? Has it not worked out? Has it captured what I've wanted to achieve in this drawing? Now, if I haven't had any intentions for achievement in the drawing, it's very hard to do that. So that's often a problem when we just start to draw without actually having a goal for what we want to achieve in this drawing cycle, in this learning cycle. But if I complete the final step of the learning cycle in my previous drawing cycle, if you like, marking my work, working out has it succeeded or not, to the degree it hasn't succeeded, I've given myself a focus for my next drawing cycle and for my next learning cycle to work on those elements that didn't work, because there is no point continuing to use them in further drawings when they're not working. That's just wasting a 2.5 hour drawing cycle. And the problem is, a week is a long time. If we have a week in between our drawing and learning cycles, that's a long time to wait before doing again the drawing cycle. It's a long time to remember the experience, the muscle memory, the thoughts that we had as we drew, the ideas, the frustrations that we had, the focus of how we might do things differently, the ideas we may have come up with. It's a long time to carry that with us so that we can intentionally put it into practice in the next drawing. And depending what we draw, we might not even need to put into practice the things that we could see perhaps hadn't worked. We may actually have chosen a subject this week where we don't need to do those things because we were discouraged with last week's experience. But even if I'm drawing a totally different subject, if I don't come to it with intent from my experience, from my critiquing of my previous drawing cycle, learning cycle, then I'm going to be doing things the same way. I'm going to be repeating the thinking, the techniques, and I'm going to end up basically with the same results I got last drawing session for the same reasons last time. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And no changing means no improvement, because I want change. I want my drawings to improve from how they look right now. And for that, we need to get specific intention from our previous drawing cycle, our previous learning cycle, to carry into the next one. Practice, practice, practice doesn't bring automatic improvement. having some idea of what we need to change and seeking to change it is what brings improvement. Clearly what we need is more than one drawing cycle, more than one learning cycle a week. We need as many as we can manage. You might be thinking, well, that's easy for you to say, old man, but I have lots of other things that I have to do in my world besides drawing. I don't have time to spend hours several times a week. I'm lucky if I can manage it once a week. But I'm not suggesting that you repeat the drawing cycle, the learning cycle you've established for yourself. In fact, because it's not giving you the results you want, repeating that is the last thing you need to do. Let me suggest how you might change it. What if instead of one drawing and learning cycle a week, you have 3 or 4? And before you think, I don't have that much time, think of children practicing the piano when they learn the piano. Every morning they do 20 minutes of piano practice, running up and down scales, playing very simple tunes over and over again, learning simple skills that they're going to add complexity to as they become proficient at one level, which over time will increase the complexity of their 20 minutes daily practice. But what they do will always be achievable, always be possible for them to do well in, because the level of the practice will be pegged to what they can do well. Well, perhaps you can't draw a picture in 30 minutes, but I don't think you should be trying. No one said we have to draw a picture, a whole scene, in a drawing session to learn. In fact, if we think back to learning other things, other skills, we don't start learning the piano by playing current songs. We don't start by trying to reproduce what people who are advanced are doing. We start by learning components, small components that we can repeat over and over and do well. We need to find the drawing equivalent of these. So instead of trying to draw a whole scene, which really just overwhelms me, is a complexity I can't succeed in. Too many things to be thinking about and working with all at once, way beyond my experience and understanding at this point. I need to choose a simple object, a simple subject, or perhaps a simple technique, and learn to achieve that well. And it may only be a small part of a drawing, it may only be a small part of a complex subject, or it may be a very simple subject drawn in a very simple style. But the simplicity lets me mark it more accurately, because I'm not trying to do so many things at once. If it doesn't look right, it's going to be easier to work out why. And then in my next 30-minute drawing cycle or 20-minute drawing cycle, I either repeat the same exercise because it's an exercise. I'm not producing an artwork, I'm practicing. I'm practicing with exercises because that's what we do when we learn a skill. If I'm not happy with it, I do it again. And if the second time I do it, I think, that's great. Now I can intentionally choose a subject that pushes me a little bit in a further direction. What I do is I establish not just drawing cycles, but learning cycles where I can learn something in that session. I can mark it, I can assess myself and decide whether I stay and repeat or whether I advance on to the next level. And I choose something for the next level that I have a chance of doing well. And then I repeat that learning cycle in whatever I draw. So now I can have 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe 5 drawing and learning cycles a week, because I'm not trying to draw pictures that end up not really being very good. But in that time, I can still complete a very productive learning cycle. If I don't have the skill to draw something, why waste a lot of time drawing a large complex drawing with lots of problems? I'm better off drawing a small thing with a few problems that I can recognize and work on and fix, and then move on, adding a level of complexity. This is improvement. This is the way my drawing eventually will change, will improve. And while you might say, but I'm not going to improve in drawing things if I'm always just drawing a very small part of a bigger scene, I would say that generally, if I become better at drawing a small thing, then I learn how to draw well. And I then take that skill of having learned how to draw well to other subjects. But I do need to make sure I'm completing a learning cycle, not just a drawing cycle. I don't just finish my drawing, my exercise that I'm doing. I look at it and I assess it and I get the direction for, do I move on? Do I stay at this place for a bit longer? And whichever way it goes, what am I going to be concentrating on in the next drawing cycle so that it becomes a learning cycle as well? So I now have many more learning cycles each week. And while I don't get drawings to look at, I do get improvement. I need to accept the fact that at the start, we don't get to the end. And that if my drawings haven't been improving, then that shows that the learning strategy I have is not working and I need to do something different. By having more drawing cycles close together that try to achieve way less in a lot less time, but that give me a chance of actually being in control of what I'm trying to do and what I do, and then assessing how successful I've been and planning the next step. I resist the temptation to get a large sheet of paper and start wandering all over it with pen or pencil, doing this very impressive photo reference as best I can, but in the end, not being sure where I'm going in it, what I'm doing, how I'm trying to get there, and being disappointed with the result. I focus on small skills areas of either drawing particular subjects or using particular techniques such as hatching. I improve in small areas that build and build and build with each drawing cycle. Are you seeing improvement in your drawing? If not, then maybe this approach is what you need to really start getting improvement in the drawing that you do. And of course, I'm not saying that we can't stop our practice sessions and try and draw a scene in some way. We do want to stay motivated as well. We do want to keep in touch with what we're hoping to do, wanting to do, as long as that becomes an encouraging experience for us. But particularly at the start, I have to accept the fact that there's an awful lot to learn. And when I think of how I would learn any other skill, I recognize that at the start, you go slowly, and that the first things are always the hardest things to learn, even though in the end, when we look back, they were very simple things, because we're getting ourselves into the way of thinking and learning the fundamental skills that we will then use as we move on in this skill area into greater complexity. Learning to draw is a skill. So instead of organizing how I draw as if I were already an artist, I need to organize my drawing as a student would who's learning a skill. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope if perhaps you haven't seen improvement in your drawings over time, it gives you some direction. But look, in the end, however you do it, however it ends up looking, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.